there'll also be a government communications board in terms of the planning of comms, government communications board, which will have permanent secretaries and ministers, but also representatives from the ALBs and other public services on it to draw all this together. We will move forward with this. The Government Communications Service will come into operation on the 1st of Jan 2014, and a lot of the consequent business changes, the centres of excellence and so on, will come into place on in April 14. So I hope that's a package that will set out for you a way of developing your own standards, developing your own standing in the organisation. And I say that as the first thing I did when I started formally in this role on the 15th of April was come to Wales. You would, wouldn't you? To the Comms Cymru Newport conference. And you said at that conference, and I've got it because I wrote it all down, you said we need to understand digital better, we need to understand evaluation better, we need training, we need to understand the standing of what we do. There are particular campaigns that we need to do. We don't do enough campaigns with disabled people. And I hope that part of the purpose of me coming back today is that Newport Charter. I can set out how I've listened to what you said in that and addressed that. The point about communications with disabled people was made absolutely, clearly and passionate to me in Newport. And if you see the Disability Confident campaign and some of the social justice campaigns that we've run with DWP, which I've taken a huge interest in, champion, I hope that we're delivering on those things, because I am here as your professional lead to serve you, as well as to hopefully give you an idea of where we are going in the future. So just to sum up, look, I think that all this government communications reform matters because society and media are changing in ways that intuitively, but sometimes faster than we think. Who'd have thought that the BlackBerry, when I got one of these BlackBerries, I thought I'd made it. I had a BlackBerry, in about whenever it was, 1906 or something. It was the greatest thing ever. Now, the communications battlefield is that, when we used to think about getting page leads in the Western Mail, we now need to get our message on that screen. That is the target, and that's what I need you to be skilled to achieve. And I know before you don't talk to me about government IT, right? I have this. I had a plan to transfer my BlackBerry, my iPhone contract. The government said it was got to be on our terms and conditions, but yeah, we'll do it. They mucked it up. This does not work at the moment. The government has switched it off, which sums up the problem. So I'm aware of the IT challenge that we face together. Nevertheless, if we are to do this, there's great practice happening already. And I've talked about the social justice campaign, and the interesting thing about the social justice campaign, given you're targeting the audience, people with disabilities, we can now track online from when people click on the Google ads that are part of that campaign that say you want a job, this is how you go about it, through to people coming to the job centre and actually getting a job. And that sort of digital journey and that evaluation means communications can prove its worth. The press release is dead. Discuss. I will leave that to questions, except I would just note that I was talking to the head of press at the Department of Health yesterday, said, look, we get it, we are going to stop issuing press releases, we are just going to have a rolling news website, and all our information, our infographics and our videos and blogs are all going to be on there. And personally, I think that is the future. My ask to you today is, can you please join the armed forces? It's reasonable, isn't it? No? All right. We have a challenge in this country as government in that we need to strengthen our reserve forces as part of the new defence strategy. When I was in Carnarvon, I went to the Museum for the Royal Regiment of Wales, which was impressive and moving, and reminded me about the importance that that regiment has played in the history of Wales and the history of the UK. But nevertheless, the Reserves campaign is a major cross-government campaign that will start next week. It will start, in fact, on the 25th of October, because we want to encourage people, not just to join the army and, go and, fight and so on, but because I am absolutely convinced that the skills you learn, the leadership skills that you bring, the service that it offers, and the fact that you get paid for doing that is hugely important. The other thing I just note is that when I'm talking about this, I'm not sort of addressing the younger men in the audience. One thing the Army have been very clear is we need specialists, and we need men and women, and we need people who can support our cyber warfare units. We need intelligence officers, we need media people, we need medics, we need all sorts of different disciplines that you wouldn't necessarily associate with the armed forces. So the reserves is an example about cross-government campaigns, the future of government communications. The Badger Colour in England, you may have views about it, but I would just note that in the first week of the Badger Colour, they issued 350 tweets from DEFRA and one press release. 350 tweets, one press release. And what is important about that is not the quantity, but their online engagement and the fact that every night I get a report in terms of the analytics about who's saying what about the campaign, and what Brian Oddie and Bill May and what DEFRA are saying, is an example about real-time evaluation, effective engagement, that conversation with the audience, which is hugely impressive. I could go on with examples. There are examples from Wales, and I hope to see some of those at the break. But I would just note that as part of this reform programme, it was interesting presenting it to the Civil Service Board, the head of the Civil Service, the permanent secretaries, and so on, because they're a sort of sceptical lot. They prod and push and say, what about this and what about that? But when they said, all right, yeah, we get it, we buy the package, you can go ahead with it, they then said, and what about this, and what about that, and what about the other thing? One of the big things that came up was internal communications, which is why we set up an internal communications project, and we'll publish in January the toolkit for internal communications, which is designed to find the best practice from across the UK and make it the standard. But the permanent secs then said, right, we get, we've forgotten about communications. We perhaps didn't give it the priority it has deserved. We're now on it. We want you to come back as head of profession, and we want you every quarter to tell us where communications is succeeding and what we need to do. So from the top of the shop, there is support for what we are doing. Finally, I'll offer you the Arthur Leathley test. Who knows who Arthur is? He's the new Director of Communications at DEC. And he got that job. He was former Director of Communications at Virgin Trains. And before that, he was in a PR agency, and before that, he was a lobby journalist. Now, Arthur got that job against the best that the internal candidates, existing civil service candidates, could put up, because most of the people who applied for that job from within the civil service were good at one thing. They were marketeers, or they were heads of news, and so on, and they did those jobs very well. Arthur had done the press bit because he'd been a lobby journalist. He'd done the agency bit, understanding the customer, because he'd been in an agency. Then he went to Virgin, where he picked up internal communications. But crucially, the wow factor was he said, right, this is how I took communications, I melded it into customer service, which wasn't very good in Virgin in those days, and that is where we learnt all sorts of things, and there's digital comms, and there's Twitter. And of course I did strategic advice, and by the way, because Virgin, was quite a tough place, you'll remember some of the tragedies that afflicted Virgin Trains, few, but, significant, we did crisis comms. So we had the whole package. And the challenge for you as government communicators, if you want to progress, and I hope that you do, and I will help you do that, is you've got to have that range of skills. And in summary, that is what I hope the new Government Communications Service will do for you. It will give you and equip you with that range of skills where you can succeed in improving lives and building your own career. Thank you. Yeah, of course, yeah.